Hey, what's going on, guys? Kellen from Movement Parallels Life here, back with another guided practice. I thought it was about time that we had another high-intensity session, so that's what we got in store today. Movements plus intensity. We're bringing it together for a killer workout. I think you're going to love it. So here's the deal. We're going to start off with a warm-up, 5 or 6 minutes of gentle movements, just checking in with the body. You know how we do it. Then we're going to get into movement combinations. So I've paired two movements, and you're going to have a 90-second interval. Now, in that time, you've got to figure out both of these movements and the transition between them. The good thing is that's a lot of time. You can spend the first half playing around with the patterns, the second half starting to bring a little bit more intensity. Remember, your movements don't have to perfectly match my movements. Just use me as a reference point, as a guide, but ultimately you want to find the right expression of these movements that's going to work best for you today. We'll finish things off with a little recovery, some breathing, and some stretching, and that'll be it. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave comments. I'd love to hear how this stuff is working out for you. You can also check out some of my other offerings. The Free Mover Mobility Project, information on that is listed down below. All right, that's enough of an introduction. The only thing left to do is to get after it, all right? Enjoy the workout. We'll talk to you soon. So we'll open the practice with our warm-up movements. These are going to be 60-second intervals. We're going to start with rock-ups and reaches. Now, what you want to focus on is diversifying your movements. You have so many different angles that you could extend into your reach. You can use one arm or both arms. You have different ways of rocking up, different bases that you can rock up to. So don't get too tied to any one pattern, but explore, and through that exploration, you're going to be able to start to assess what your physical status is today. Next movement, we'll transition into a kneeling position and then go into half kneeling steps. Once again, diversifying this pattern by stepping out at different angles. Focus on maintaining good posture in the upper body, good alignment through the spine, and using these different variations of the step out to begin to open the hips. We'll make our way up to standing and into a single leg balance on the left leg. Going to do some different movement variations here, primarily single leg hops and ground touches. If you're feeling really stable in your balance, you can step things up a little bit with single leg swings or step overs. The idea here is to start to wake up those stabilizing muscles in the feet, lower legs, and hips. Switch legs and continue on with your single leg balancing. Next pattern to continue on the warm-up is rotation stretching. Now there's tons of different ways that you could approach this. Here I'm showing just a simple standing rotation with a little spinal extension. Then more of this standing cross crawl pattern, so it's an extension of the opposite limbs and then a contraction. If you picture these diagonal lines running across your torso from shoulder to opposite hip, then that's exactly the area, the line that you're going to key in on trying to create the stretch. And more accurately, moving in and out of the stretch. We want these movements to be smooth but somewhat dynamic as we search for the elasticity along these fascial lines. And now we're transitioning out of our warm-up into our workouts. These are the combinations, starting things off with running and bouncing. While you're running in place, you're working to keep the form compact and your ground contacts light. The bounce starts as a soft and rhythmic weight shift from side to side or forward and back. Then it becomes more dynamic, advancing and retreating, moving side to side, changing orientation. This is just great for developing agility and adaptability. Focus on staying in constant motion. You might notice a natural ebb and flow starting to emerge where you're moving very intensely and explosively and then backing off, softening and moving very fluidly. As your heart rate begins to rise, focus on your breathing, keeping it relaxed and controlled. Our next combination is squat shifting and kneeling get-ups. For my squat shifting, I take a wide stance, and the action is shifting weight from side to side. You can use fingertips in contact with the ground for some extra support. You can allow the heel to release from the ground, whatever you need to do until the hips start to open up. From a wide stance, I'll step to a narrow stance and then down into the kneeling position, working those kneeling get-ups. So the sequence that I went with for this combination was something like 3 to 5 squat shifts and then a kneeling get-up. Trying to aim for finding a little bit of structure around these movements, but still have some space to play and explore. Our next combination, crawl lunges and inverted crawl hip presses. From a foot hand crawl position, stepping a leg up, placing the foot next to the hands. With the inverted crawl hip lift, drive the hips to the ceiling and then draw them back between the hands. Lift, draw back and press, compress, really feeling those abs and hip flexors working. Do that 3 times, then back to the crawl lunges 6 times, 3 aside. Getting a little bit more dynamic. As I step the foot, I remove the same side hand. So you can move very dynamically, very swiftly with the lunges, and then with the hip presses, really focusing on holding those end ranges with some strength. And our last combination for this first set, we've got the side bend sit hip switch and the tripod get up. The transition into the tripod get up can be a little tricky. I also added a kick with the tripod on the way back down. Again, the rhythm I used, 3 hip switches, 2, 3, and then the transition into the tripod get up, back down kick, and 3 hip switches. Keep moving, just a few more seconds left in this combination. And that's time. Before we transition into set 2, we're going to take a moment to pause, breathe, and recover. If you need longer than 15 seconds, feel free to pause the video. We're back and we're heading into set 2. First combination, the lateral shuffle crawl and the crawling kick through. For the kick-throughs, focus on maintaining stability through the support arm and rotating the hips, extending the legs straight out. 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. With the lateral shuffle crawl, I'm going with 2 shuffles with high hips and then 2 shuffles with low hips. I transition out of those crawl shuffles into 6 kick-throughs. We're on to the next combination, split squat jump and knee hand hip roll. I'm going to start in the split squat position with my hips sitting on my back heel. Long spine, strong core. I'm going to explode upward, tuck my knees, and as I land, transitioning right back into that split squat, then performing a little pivot reverse 180-degree turn. Then there's a quick transition to the knee hand position, going into these simple hip rolls. Sitting to the side, rolling across the hips, transitioning back into hands and knees. 2 to 4 jumps, 2 to 4 rolls, and keep it moving. The next combination will be a chain of movements, a rock up to a jump to a sprawl. You can start things off by just patterning the rock up. Make your way to standing, and you can either perform a tuck jump or a forward jump. As you contact the ground, planting the hands and sprawling the legs back. Turn over, back into the rock up. You can perform this as a chain of movements, or you can isolate any one piece and rep it a few times. On to the last combination in this second set. We've got long rolls and V-ups. The sequence I decided to go with, 5 V-ups and then a full roll all the way over and back. This is a core killer. I find just a little space to rest in this tucked hollow body position before I get back into my V-ups. Make good choices in choosing the right expression of these movements. If you feel your form start to break down, don't just push through it. Change the movements. Just back off slightly. Keep working hard, but make the movement more manageable. Stay with it. This is the last 10 seconds. And time. It's the end of set 2. It's time to recover. Pause and breathe. We've got 15 seconds here. If you need to take longer, pause the video. All right, we're back in it. Last set, 4 more combinations. We're starting off with the prone spin and push-ups. The prone spin might require a little extra practice. You're going to start face down, roll to the side of your hip. Then the bottom leg is going to swing forward, bring you to a seated position. The legs can continue swinging to the side of the body. You return to the prone position. Right into a set of push-ups. I went with 5 reps. A key part of the prone spin is how you're using your hands to push off the floor. And of course, this movement is going to be more challenging if you're on a surface that has a lot of grip. We're on to our next combination, the squat spiral and the plank half tuck. We can challenge the core and the hips with these plank half tucks. Choose the variation that's going to be best for you. I went with a knee to the armpit and then extending the leg out to the side. Then back into the knee bend position, plant the hands, and then sweeping the leg behind my body, rotating 180 degrees. Can also sweep the leg in front of the body and start linking these spirals together. We're on to our next combination, knee jump get-ups and handstand hops. If your confidence in these movements is still growing, make the modifications that's going to make this work better for you. We're looking for a light and balanced landing with the knee jump get-up. With the handstand hop, we want to see the arms kept locked out and looking for this alignment of hips over the shoulders, over the wrists. In our final combination of this third set, we've got bridge push-ups and leg lifts. Personally, I find that my bridge push-ups feel the best when I plant my hands, elevate my hips, and then press up to the full bridge position. In between reps, I like to bring my back down to the floor, or at least the back of my shoulders down to the floor before pressing back up. The leg lifts continue to work the core and they balance out the extension from the bridge push-ups. You can get more creative with these leg lifts, but I just went pretty standard, sagittal plane and frontal plane. Last 10 seconds here to finish the combination. And that's time. We're going to shift gears and we're going to start in on a recovery work. Coming into a half kneeling stretch. We're focusing on stretching the hip flexors of the down leg. Maybe working some of these back leg lift-offs. Making sure to stay rooted strong in the stance. Really feel your feet pressing down into the ground. Feeling the glute Squeeze strong. Once you've set that up, then you can start to add some length and glide forward. Make sure that the bottom ribs don't start to flare open or arching into your back excessively. Next, we'll transition into a deep squat and work some overhead reaching patterns. On this day, I'm feeling a little more bound up, a little bit more restricted, and I'm just taking the range of motion that I have and trying to breathe through it, not forcing my body to where I think it should go, but just allowing myself to be where I'm at and use my breath to stay strong in this position, but also stay calm and see if any more space starts to free up. Next, working any side bend sit variations of your choosing. Continuing to explore the stretches in these seated positions. I'm going to an open long sit or straddle sit, and also going to be checking in with the cross sit. Any expressions of these positions that create the stretch that feels best for you, follow that. And I'll finish the practice today with some stretching for the torso and mobility for the spine through side bending and bridge reaching. And if you're still here with me, congratulations, because we've made it to the end of today's practice. Not only were there a lot of complex movement patterns in today's session, there were also very demanding movements, very intense. So there's no need to expect that you master all these movements at once. Think back on how you performed today and maybe just take one or two pieces of movement that you want to spend some time with over the next week or two. Start polishing those movements, refining them, and then come back to this practice again and see how your movement has grown, how your performance increases. Remember, this is all a process and the practice never really stops. It's an honor to be able to share some of my practice with you. I really appreciate you taking the time to come hang out. So best wishes to you in your movement training. Best wishes to you in living a good life. I will see you in the next video.